Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast may contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews, be sure to check out our show on YouTube. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show.
No fate. The future of the franchise is not set. I am Joe. Cyberdyne Systems Model 101, living tissue over metal endoskeleton. My mission is to protect you from bad movies. And my partner is also a Terminator, but not like me. A Dave 1000. Advanced prototype. The Dave 1000 can't form complex sentences, but it can form clunky, awkward puns and quips and zingers. And this is episode number 140. And in this episode, 3 new trailers out this week. The Harley Quinn solo movie, also known as Birds of Prey, and 2 new Star Trek shows, the new Picard and Season 3 of Star Trek Discovery. Please contain my excitement. And then, come with me if you want to live through this doomed franchise. Dave and I will discuss James Cameron's smash hit to the 1991's Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Hasta la vista, baby. What's up, partner?
And hasta la vista to you too, sir. Wow, this is going to be a fun one, I feel. That was almost a dire introduction to what is actually it's still a good movie, but I can understand what you're feeling, where you're feeling, and I think the discussion will show that.
I agree. So let's get to it.
You know what a Harley Quinn is? A Harley Quinn's role is to serve. It's nothing without a master. No one gives 2 shits who we are beyond that.
Why even bother calling it Birds of Prey if Harley Quinn is why not just make it the frickin' Harley Quinn movie?
Yeah, I kind of got that too. And honestly, I will say this. I mean, it's a teaser trailer. It's supposed to get your attention and make you want to see this movie. And Margot Robbie is a big draw, and I think a lot of people thought that her Harley Quinn was pretty much the single decent thing in that god-awful Suicide Squad. With that said, can't say it got my attention, and I can't say I want to see this movie.
I agree with you 100%. I don't mind. I feel like it's kind of a bait and switch. I kind of feel like, when they first announced Birds of Prey, it's like, oh my god, that's great. These are some great characters. I really can't wait. Oh, wait. It's just a backdoor pilot for the Birds of Prey starring Harley Quinn. Really? Did we need that? It feels like uncertain. It's like, why bother going with the property? The very, very popular property amongst comic fans. Why even bother going with that if it's just going to be a frickin' Harley Quinn movie?
Yeah.
I have nothing against Margot Robbie, and I have nothing against her performance as Harley Quinn. I kind of appreciated how she at least sounded like from the animated series and everything like that. I was okay with that, but I was just like, this movie has Huntress in it. This movie has Black Canary in it. Where the hell are they?
Yeah. I literally got no sense of any other character in this film. It was totally just all about her, and it wasn't until she actually said it was me and the Joker broke up, like yada yada yada, and I was literally not making any sort of a connection to the first movie at all until she finally went, not even Mr. J or something around that. I kind of went, oh yeah, that's right, this is that. It kind of had a whole different vibe. So yeah, definitely not looking. I really didn't even think it looked visually exciting, because I thought, as god-awful as that other movie was, I kind of thought like it's exactly the kind of pile of nonsense that at least makes a good trailer. And it had like the graphics, etc. This one I kind of felt like, boy, it's even, I like literally as I'm thinking back to it, and I've seen it at least like 2 or 3 times now, there's no visual that strikes me. I can't remember anything. It was just kind of a wash of stuff, and none of it stuck with me.
I literally just rewatched it before we started recording the show, and you're right. I'm not remembering really anything. Nothing is standing out to me visually, plot-wise. Nothing is standing out to me other than, oh, look, Harley Quinn's leading these girls. Thanks, guys. No. I'm not sold. I am not sold. And this is gonna be a rough episode with trailers, I think.
Yes, it is. So let's get on to the next pile of nonsense.
I've spent a year searching for that domino that tipped over and started all of this.
You believe in ghosts.
What does that mean?
That badge on your shirt.
As I was watching the Star Trek Discovery trailer, I kind of appreciated the Birds of Prey trailer.
Go on.
What tremendous self-masturbatory nonsense to suddenly insert these characters invented, messing up timelines and everything like that, as suddenly the only hope for the Federation in the future. Really? This is where you're going with that story? This is what it's all come to? That these people are all that's going to be able to save the future of the Federation? Blah.
I was kind of hoping we would do this one last because honestly, I really was just going to say to you, dude, can't we just, jokingly, but I would have been like, can we just skip this and move on? Because, this literally, I saw this, I watched it. It felt like a speed bump. I'm like, this thing does.
Speed bumps are useful.
This thing did nothing for me. And I mean nothing. I saw the first couple episodes. I was just so turned off by it. I didn't bother. And then I saw trailers for the second season. I never bothered. So now I saw this. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I don't care what's going on. I don't care about any of these people. It's just go away. I really just could care less.
And I'm going to leave it at that. I think that's the perfect spot to end it at. It was like, well, it happened and we've talked about it. So I suppose we should talk about it. But I'm not proud of myself for bringing this one in.
Of course. We have to. It's a thing and, But like I said, I would have. I was actually planning to even sort of give you a warning ahead of time that I was going to say, can we just not do this? But we were going to press on anyway. But it's just we got to cover it, but it's just a big turd.
Would you like to finish it, Captain? I don't know how. That is not true, sir.
Okay, this is going to be a little controversial. I understand that they leaned heavily on the nostalgia for the Star Trek Picard trailer. And I'll be the first to admit, it kind of worked on me.
Okay.
It did. I was a huge Star Trek The Next Generation fan. Seeing Riker there, seeing Troy, seeing Data, hell, even seeing 7 of 9. In the original trailer when she popped up, I was like, oh, what the hell is going on with that? But I don't know where this series is going or what the general gist of it is, but I'm kind of leaning into, you know what? Patrick Stewart did a damn fine job saying goodbye to the Charles Xavier character, and this is kind of feeling like something similar for the Picard character. And if that's the case, I'm kind of on board, and I'm gonna give him a shot. I'm more excited of the trailers we've seen. This one got me enough that I'm actually looking forward to trying to watch the show.
You know what this trailer has successfully done? It successfully built you up for a little disappointment that you might not have otherwise had.
Potentially, but you know what? I'm a big boy. I can take it. I've got my safe word. I can handle it. If I have to back out, I will back out.
Well, listen, I'll tell you what. I know what you're talking about because I had the same vibe. I said, you know what? At least this time around, they're showing us some stuff. They're showing us some familiar faces to get excited about. So I have no problem with anything you just said. I know what you're saying. I mean, the nostalgia factor is there. So I'm there. But yeah, I feel like it's still not showing us much in terms of actual story. I kind of feel like I almost feel like the Logan plot now has sort of become a blueprint for a lot of things, and I'm already getting a vibe that this is that. You know, it's kind of that, this girl she's the last hope for something or other, and I have to be the sole one to take care of her, even though I'm the last one who's equipped to do so. So ultimately, it's not really doing anything for me, but I totally agree with you that it was nice to see those familiar faces again.
I agree. I'm kind of hopeful because I just found out that the pilot episode is being written by Michael Chabon. Michael Chabon is a huge nerd. He wrote a whole novel about a fictionalized account of the creation of Superman, which is a really, really good book. Plus, he was the one who crafted the story for Spider-Man 2. That was him. So I'm kind of between this neat little nostalgia trip and hearing about Michael Chabon. I'm probably setting myself up for disappointment, but sometimes, man, sometimes you can't be dour all the time. Sometimes if they give you a little nugget of hope, lean into it and see what happens.
Listen, I got no problem with that. I don't know. There's a part of me there's a part of me that was ready to say, well, it's worth giving it a chance, taking a look. But honestly, again, it's got capable actors. At if nothing else, you're going to get the performance of Patrick Stewart, which is stellar always. Again, you do get some familiar faces. That interplay alone should be interesting. I thought the look of Data was a little off, but I guess 20 years, however many years later, you're not going to get the guy to how much?
Almost 30 years later.
So, again, you're not going to get, he's not going to look exactly the way he did, even though, technically he should look exactly the same way because technically in the story, he should not have aged. But again, it is what it is. And it'll be nice to revisit some familiar faces and fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Well, one other thing, actually Commander Data is dead.
Right. So, which makes me feel like this is either a clone, basically, like they redesigned him the same model, same everything, kind of not unlike the Terminator we're about to talk about, or these are all dream sequences, in which case he would still be unaged. So again, depending on what the story's saying, I would assume that he has to be the same age or is supposed to be.
A cyborg, identical to the one who failed to kill Sarah Connor, must now protect her teenage son, John Connor, from a more advanced and powerful cyborg. Written by James Cameron and William Wisher, directed by James Cameron, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. So let's just forget about the part where they said no one else comes back. It's him and me. Let's just forget about that right now. Okay, and let's forget about the illogic of the computer having a backup plan. We can forget about that. Okay, because frankly, I still love this freaking movie. I still enjoy the ever-loving hell out of watching this. I know that some of it contradicts the first movie. Don't care. Had an amazing time watching this movie again. And I've seen this movie dozens of times. Dozens upon dozens of times. I was telling a friend of mine, what are you reviewing this week? And I told her, Terminator 2. I was like, well, you've watched it, haven't you? I was like, yeah, but, a lot of the movies we've already watched, we just rewatch it again to refresh. And sometimes watching a movie that we've seen before can be a chore. That was not the case here. I had a blast. I was still floored at how well this movie holds up after all these years.
Yeah. Yeah, I will agree with that. Cameron is the master at kind of knowing what he can get away with. He shoots, he does special effects, only what he can do. He doesn't overreach. So the editing is tight, the effects are always great, and because of that, they don't really age poorly. They age pretty well.
Yeah. He seamlessly blends, the CGI, and the CGI is crude for its time, but it still works. And when he switches between the two and into the live action stuff, like some of the makeup effects they did for him for when the T-1000 was like shot and stuff like that, those were practical and they still look amazing.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I can remember when this was one of those movies when this came out on. I'm pretty sure my brothers and I had this on Laserdisc. It's probably one of the last Laserdiscs we ever got, frankly. And I specifically remember that anytime we wanted, like somebody came over, a friend came over, we'd be like, "Oh, you got to see this," and we'd pop that on because we wanted them to see the clarity and just how sharp and vivid it was. And I can't remember what kind of TV we had back then, but the speakers were good enough that when you played, the scene we kept going back to was the scene in the hallway when
at the insane asylum.
No. The first scene in the hallway at the mall. I guess.
When they first meet. Yes.
They first meet. He's got the roses, and he's got the shotgun hidden in the box of roses. I mean, that's great. I mean, and the big sound of the shotguns going off, the gunshots and everything. I mean, we must have played that, I don't know how many times.
It's an incredible scene. Visually, this movie is stunning from start to finish. Even when it's not having action sequences, the clarity of each shot and the framing of them. It's. I mean, remember the show on YouTube, Every Frame a Picture? I think of this movie when I think of that title.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it is honestly, everything is extraordinary about this film, and it absolutely raised the bar at the time, and like you said, I mean, there's a reason why this movie still stands up.
So yes, there it is. We loved it. We're going to spoil it now. Not like anybody who's listening to the show hasn't been spoiled, hasn't seen this movie, but whatever. We try to start as general as possible and get into the major spoilers after. So let's get into the major spoilers. You ready?
Bring it on.
This is the movie that almost made me completely quit watching movie trailers ever again.
Okay.
I see your look. I'm going to explain. The first trailer that came out was a teaser trailer. It was just, Brad Feigel's freaking awesome music and showing like the assembly of an endoskeleton, ending with, the machine putting the skin on the endoskeleton and it being Arnie with the red eyes and just him saying, "I'll be back." That was the teaser trailer for this movie. Okay. That was all I needed for this movie. I made the mistake of seeing the second one. And as I was watching this movie, it was making me even more annoyed as I'm watching this. Because the way Cameron did this movie, until the Terminator says, "Get down," if you hadn't seen that trailer that revealed that the Terminator was actually there to protect John Connor, you would have thought it was the other way around.
Yes. Absolutely.
It still annoys me to this day.
Yeah, that is very true. You're absolutely right. If you didn't know that would have been a pretty spectacular, or not. I don't know, or not. Would you be disappointed though? Like, would you kind of see? I think one of the I was right about to say one of the problems of the film, but it's not a problem. But I can recall back then, especially when the film came out, and you sort of when you first realized, oh, Arnold's the hero in this one, and it was kind of like, oh yeah, well, because Arnold is getting popular, Arnold is becoming a leading man, so to have him just be the villain in another film, we want him to be the good guy. So we had to reprogram him, and now he's going to be the hero, and there'll be a bad Terminator. But again, and I remember kind of being a little conflicted on that. The purist in me, the part of me that goes to a movie and wants, absolute realism and authenticity and a sense of loyalty to the original story. I was a little bugged by it. So I kind of wonder if you went in expecting another Terminator and then like literally in the first couple of frames you realize, oh wait, he's the hero. Would that have turned you off in any way?
You know what? I'll never know. Really, this is one of those hypothetical questions that we really can't answer. What I can say, and something that I want to point out, especially this early in the review, is that in the first Terminator, remember we were even saying in the review last week, it's amazing just how much menace that Schwarzenegger gave the Terminator in that movie with just little subtle things and so on and so forth. And here I'm going to call out Robert Patrick. That dude was downright terrifying to me at some instances. Just the way he looked, the way he moved his eyes. When he is looking forward and he's not blinking and he's running as fast as he can, that's scary as hell, man.
Yeah. Totally. Absolutely. That is kind of amazing how he can do that. Cameron, again, Cameron has some serious, he's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. The fact that he knows enough to make these guys look kind of so robotic and sleek, etc. I remember when he was talking about just casting for that part for the T-1000, and he said he needed somebody who was kind of cat-like in his movements, and boy, was that good casting.
That was amazing casting. I remember reading an interview with Robert Patrick where he said he basically studied the movements of the eyes of an eagle and tried to copy that in his looks and everything like that. And you could totally see it. It's just a hunter's eyes. Even when he's trying to blend in, when he's doing the whole gosh shucks, I'm just a cop. It's like, there's still that little thing that's off about him, but like not enough that because we're the audience and we're clued to the fact that there's something not right about this guy. And just the way his eyes work, when he gets really focused. Like one of my favorite parts with him is when they're at the arcade and he's still doing trying to be the aw shucks cop and everything like that. And then all of a sudden the guy points to the machine that John is at and like his face just changes. Like boom, this is it. And the way he just stalks down that hallway, knocks people the frick out of the way. Oh my God.
Totally. I absolutely agree. That was great stuff.
So maybe, you know what? Now that I'm saying it that way, maybe it is good that we knew beforehand because, we probably would have been wondering, why is the guy being such a jerk about it? And I understand he needs to save John Connor, but, and also Brad Feidel's music, his little theme, that little wong, theme for the T-1000 was since like you first met him. So there was always that underlayer of menace. So maybe I'm overreading into it. Maybe it really wasn't supposed to be that way.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree. And again, kind of following up with the casting and the music, when I was saying before about how one guy seems so cat-like and everything, I love the fact that he kind of makes Schwarzenegger look sort of clunky by comparison. Like again, Schwarzenegger, he is perfectly cast in this role. It's really great.
Well, there's also the evolution of Sarah Connor. We should probably talk about that a little bit. Now, if I may, okay, I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine because we were talking about The Last Jedi. Don't give me that look.
Okay.
Just hear me out. Hear me out. We were talking about The Last Jedi, and one of the things that we were like emphatically agreed upon was we hate when a movie does like a complete character evolution that happens off screen. And like with Luke, you could say, you know what, maybe there is a justification for Luke going from being swashbuckling hero to old curmudgeon, get off my lawn. Okay. You could say that there might be a valid reason for that. The Last Jedi did not do a good job it did a terrible job trying to justify that evolution of the character. And in fact, in my estimation, and in her estimation as well, she felt it kind of ruined the character. Whereas you've got here, I feel like what this shows is that you can't off-screen a character's digression. You can only off-screen a character's progression. Because to go from Sarah Connor, this wispy little thing that, couldn't even balance her checkbook, as she said in the first movie, to, like, seriously yoked. I mean, that woman had arms that could break my skull. And, like, a good military tactician and everything like that. And yes, they exposition it through the movie, but even as I was watching this movie, I was thinking to myself, but it makes sense. It is a logical character progression. The first movie, her world got shattered, destroyed, told that there is no future. You've got, the original movie takes place in 84, and she was told by Kyle Reese, you've got 13 years left. 13 years left until the end of the world, and your son is the only one that's going to make it beyond that. And there's two directions a person can go in that. It's you either just like crawl into the deepest hole on the planet and just stay there and never surface, or you're like, you know what? Then I'm going to do something about it. And it felt like a justifiable progression of her character to do, like John's telling the story. She would shack up with whoever could train her, and then she would use that to teach him. It's like, that makes sense to me. As a character progression, that makes sense. And there's the difference, ladies and gentlemen, between well-written characters and piece of shit writing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because honestly, I've oftentimes been a little back and forth about that idea. The leap from, and particularly now that we've kind of rewatched the first one, and she is such a hapless sort of a character. And I mean, again, and in the context of the film, in the first one, the whole point is like by the end, she's yelling at him, on your feet, soldier, and you're a Terminator effer. I'm saving you a beep there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So that was very, very logical. So it's almost like if you're on board with that kind of a springboard in her character, and if you follow that direction, I suppose it makes sense that she was kind of as hardcore and military as she was. But there's another part of me that kind of goes, that seems like just a wild leap in character. The fact that she would be so incredibly disciplined all of a sudden, it's almost like she was, and I'm not saying this in a Mary Sue kind of way, but the fact that her character seemed flawless in its focus, that she would be able to be so yoked and so focused on essentially living in a state of being in a mission to do something. I don't know. I'm not sure. I kind of feel like it's almost like they were sort of implying. I mean, and even the scenes of her in the asylum and being interviewed on camera with Dr. Silberman, and she's kind of having a meltdown, and this is what's gonna happen. I know it's gonna happen, and I almost feel like they're sort of suggesting that this character, and the dream sequences help, by the way, I will say that. I mean, they are trying to convey that she sort of lives. It was almost like I'm watching a character who has lived through something, yet she didn't actually live through it. She lives under the threat of it. She has the knowledge of it. And again, the dream sequences help because it does put you in her mind to say that she lives with this very present idea, even though it hasn't actually happened. But again, I remember just sort of feeling like a tiny bit unconvinced that her character would have hit this point. It's almost like I think I would have liked it a little bit better if she was sort of somewhere almost sort of straddling the fence, where she is kind of hardcore and disciplined, but still has moments where her old self will still sort of shine through. I mean, it was literally almost like they played this as a different character, not a character who went from here to there, but a literal different character. Like she's playing a different person. Somebody like, oh, it's almost like they took somebody who was disciplined and took them to the next level. But she was as lighthearted as you could possibly get before the first one, or during the first one rather. So again, I kind of feel like without an actual experience or thing for her to go through to get this dour and hardcore, I'm not sure.
You don't think the events of the first movie are dour and hardcore enough for her to decide she needs to do better than what she was?
So yeah, basically my answer is no. I don't think she would be quite. She would basically, she should be sort of a combination of the Sarah Connor we saw in the original Terminator and with a slice of Kyle Reese. She shouldn't essentially be Kyle Reese. That's kind of where again, because Kyle Reese was born and raised and knew nothing else except war. Sarah got a taste of it in the first Terminator. So again, I think that the character in this should have been a little less jacked up and totally disciplined and totally military.
Well,
it made for an interesting character, don't get me wrong.
I agreed there, but I don't know, man. I felt like she still had her softer side. She was trying to fit into something that obviously wasn't a fit for her, because she made actually a lot of mistakes, going after Dyson and then at the last second, sparing him. And it was John that basically brought her out of it and brought her emotional side back a little bit. And even when she was going to have her little big speech about, you don't know what it's like to be, to have a life in me. And John's all like, yeah, that's not really constructive right now, Mom. Calm down. Take it back a notch.
Yeah.
That was,
but that's kind of the point. The point is that her arc in this movie essentially is that she's more or less lost her humanity.
Yeah.
Like the whole scene when they escape from the asylum, they go pull her out and they're in the car and she looks back and she grabs him and he starts to hug her. And then you realize she's not hugging him. She's checking him for wounds, for bullet wounds. And you see him getting all upset and he cries, etc. So again, it works with this story. I mean, you've given this Sarah Connor something to overcome. She's essentially overcoming her the loss of her own humanity, her inability to just embrace her son and feel, etc. And by the end, I think through the Miles Dyson thing, she starts to realize that she's kind of gotten, and that's sort of a mild frustration too, as I sort of feel like she's kind of an afterthought in a lot of scenes. Like again, that Miles Dyson scene again, it's all about her. It's about her coming to terms with the fact that she's lost her way, she's gotten too far, and now she's about to kill this guy in cold blood, and then she just can't do it, and etc. And then it kind of just sort of quickly moves on. Like we're going to forget about that and move on. And now it's kind of like now the Terminator and John Connor are sort of front and center again.
I understand where you're coming from. I don't feel as strongly about that transition as you do, shall we say. I felt that it was, yes, okay, fine. She did just try to kill them, then all of a sudden, hey, let's all work together to get into Cyberdyne. Can seem a bit like a stretch, but this is a movie about a giant piece of mercury that can solidify itself and make knives and stuff like that. So,
oh, there you go. Honestly, I'm with you.
The thing is that any movie, we talked about this when we were doing the Dark Knight movies, that if you look hard enough at a movie, you're going to see the flaws and you can be the nitpick. And I'm not even saying what you're saying is a nitpick or anything like that. I feel that your feelings are valid and it's your perception as to how you see things. And there's nothing wrong with that. We don't have to agree on every little thing. I saw it and felt it differently. I was captivated enough by it that my mind was able to, the leaps and logics for her character that, if you step back and really think about it, you've got a point there that there's a loss of the characterization in an almost unrealistic way. But I was so captivated by the movie that it's just not something I ever noticed. And you know what? After Dark Knight broke me, don't break this one, Joe.
It's not exactly super high on my list of nitpicks. It's just kind of it falls under the category of observation than anything else. But if we are going to nitpick,
well, we might as well go into the nitpicks. We've already talked about the great special effects, the excellent directing, the good story, the great characterization. Yeah. We've shown this movie love. Let's hurt it a little bit.
Well, I'll kind of kick a dog that's already been kicked multiple times before, but I will say this: it was funny when I watched it today, and again, I haven't really sat down in front of it in a long time. I feel like it's one of those things it's been on in the background multiple times, but sitting through it from the beginning, haven't done it lately. But the shot where they open up. And they open up with kind of like a little refresher on what's to come and what the story is about. And they show the future John Connor standing there. The future John Connor, and his face looks weathered and haggard because he's seen war, but he's got strength and et cetera, et cetera. And then I kind of went, so that's kind of like what John Furlong should be looking like right about now.
You mean Edward Furlong?
Edward Furlong, sorry, yeah. I heard, I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard that he's supposed to have a cameo in the new Terminator that's coming out. And I kind of was like, yeah, isn't that what he's supposed to look like right about now? But needless to say,
give or take 10 years, yeah. But a lot can change a person in 10 years as the plot of between, because this movie takes place 10 years after the first one, right? So even though the movie came out in 91, it's actually set in 95.
Okay, yeah, I think, that rings a bell.
Yeah, because at one point at the beginning of the movie, he's looking up the juvenile records, and it says that John was born February 1985, and this movie came out in 91. That ain't no 6-year-old kid.
He actually doesn't even look like a 10-year-old kid. He's got to be a little older than 10, I would think. Well, maybe he looks like 10. I'll give it that.
Well, you know what? That is a very good question. The movie came out. Let's do it. David always has IMDb for the movie that we're talking about up in case any little thing that we didn't think about that part comes up. He was born in 1977. So let's see, 87. That's 10. And they were filming it in like 89. So he was like 12 years old at the time.
That's what I would have said. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But I as I was watching and thinking that, I was thinking like, yeah, I forgot when the movie came out, everyone kind of just sort of went like, could you have found like a mildly less annoying kid for this movie? Because everything else about this movie is great, but boy, is he annoying.
His whines are the worst whines in the world. I mean, there were moments when the moments were calmer, wasn't like getting all excited or upset. There was a glimmer of leadership. Man, no, leadership is pushing it. Confidence. I'll say there was a little glimpse of confidence when he wasn't screeching his voice. Every time he screeched his voice, yeah, you were I was kind of wishing for Robert Patrick to catch up to him with those moments.
Yeah, and it was kind of frustrating, and I think that Cameron's a lot of things, but
yes,
he's also kind of a geek. He's a genius, but he's a geek. And I remember seeing an article, and it was something like if there was, I can't remember if it was cool geekiness or geeky coolness, but they cited Cameron's Titanic speech at the Oscars. And I was like, yeah, I'd agree with that. But yeah,
that was not good.
But I remember when every time Edward Furlong would say something, like I remember when I saw moi, did you call moi a dipshit? I was like, ugh, I forgot how cringy that was. But then later, they're trying to make him a little more badass, like, all right, he's a young punk in the beginning, but later on you're gonna start to see the glimmers of the John Connor of the future. And then when they show him, they break into Cyberdyne. He's with Miles Dyson. He grabs the thing. He grabs the arm, whatever. And he's standing there. He's like, yeah, we've got Skynet by the balls now. Come on. I'm just like, ugh, shut up. And I kind of felt like that's the Cameron geekiness. Like Cameron doesn't get how bad that is.
I say a thing about that because you're right. I don't mean to beat the kid, up or anything like that, because I mean he's a 12-year-old kid. You know, you're 12 years old to get to be in a Terminator movie. This is like the moment of your life, and I kind of feel like if I was 12 years old and I heard me talking about him the way I'm about to talk about him, that would probably crush me. But he's not 12 years old anymore. He's an adult. Yes, he is the weakest link in the entire casting chain. Everybody else seems to hit their notes perfectly.
Yeah.
And he didn't work.
And it's not, yeah, I mean, it's not his fault per se, because I kind of feel like, I mean, every reasonably decent actor has a role out there that they are perfectly suited for. You know, so again, it's I want. I mean, seriously, they show the guy, the future John Connor. Well, give me a young actor who looks like he can end up looking like that someday. There's a million different kind of child actors you can use for different things. He doesn't have to be like Laurence Olivier. He doesn't have to, you know, be a the Dustin Hoffman of our time for me to believe it. But again, like, I mean, if he's that whiny, I mean, even the kind of emo haircut, I was like, I get what you're going for here. I almost wonder maybe they should have even gone just a little bit older and kind of given us like a 12-year-old, you know, not quite a teenager. So we're starting to see the glimmer of what the grown-up kid would end up being or something. I don't know. But I mean, again, I always thought the kid was just way too whiny for this movie. And I mean, and again, it's not his fault. I mean, why is Cameron giving these long conversations in cars saying, yeah, you got to say, like, you know, no problemo and yeah. I mean, that all that stuff and teaching him to smile is, I mean, again, all that stuff is like so cringy. And it's like, why are we bothering with that stuff? I kind of sort of get what you're trying to do, but I don't know. I mean, and again, I'm like I said, this is a great movie. So these are just kind of like, I mean, when you're gifted with a great movie, you have to find the little chinks in the armor and talk about them. And that's all this is. So, I mean, I'm certainly not going to knock this thing down multiple points because of him or that sort of stuff. In fact, we might as well talk about some of the great action scenes because holy cow.
And still hold up to this very day. That initial chase sequence on the dirt bike is outstanding. It is amazing through the canals of California. I mean, Cameron is a madman. He is seriously a freaking madman. The things that he got the stunt people to do in those scenes, just like, oh my God. Even the one scene where something you would think to yourself, oh, well, this is pretty simple. Let's just, you know, have him like fake to the left, move to the right, and go around the truck as it's closing in on the motorcycle guy. Yeah. To this very day, I watched that motorcycle guy go to the right, and I'm like almost closing my eyes because he films it. The thing with Cameron that you always have to give him credit, the man has got an amazing eye for action and detail.
Yes.
And he truly maps out all of his action sequences so that they all flow together perfectly.
Yes.
And that's just one example.
Totally. He knows where the camera needs to be. He knows how to edit it. I mean, the flow is absolutely flawless. And honestly, I mean, the truck chase later is just incredible. And he still has the thing, by the way, that I said last time, where he's got that sense of build up. But when they're doing that truck chase, when they're in the little pickup truck and the helicopter is chasing them, then they the helicopter crashes and then they switch to different vehicles and the chase continues. I mean, there's a shot where like they've been rear-ended by the other vehicle and Schwarzenegger he grabs the big machine gun and just walks out of the car and walks back over walks through the pickup, climbs up onto the hood and just blasts the machine gun right into his face. I mean, and I think that's blank, the moment. It like just riddles this guy's face with bullets. And that was the moment when I first saw this, when I was like, what? I mean, like I just lost my mind. I mean, that was just off the chain awesome. Honestly, to the point where when I saw the first teaser trailer of the new Terminator and I see the girl kind of sort of replicating the same thing, and it did nothing for me. You know, it did nothing for me. Like she kind of just sort of did this little kind of flip into the back of the truck, and she goes in and she starts, shooting the the guy with the black liquid metal-y, whatever he's supposed to be thingy. And again, I'm watching that now, and all I can think of is CGI and just the slow-mo and stuff. And I'm like, oh, you guys have taken an iconic scene and totally ruined it. Not that they can take away from what they did, but I'm just saying, like, this, what they're doing now is just a pale imitation of that. But when when this happened and I first saw this, then he reaches in and grabs the wheel and flips the truck. Like, that was just off the hook. I mean, that to me was like the pinnacle of action movies at that point.
Duplicated but never replicated. That entire scene, that entire chase sequence from the minute they leave Cyberdyne, when he brings his motorcycle out, jumps it to the helicopter, goes inside and all that other stuff. That entire sequence is nearly silent and is, to me, the perfect example of an action sequence story told visually. You didn't need, you didn't need any further information than what was already on the screen. Giant truck of liquid nitrogen. They didn't have to say, look out, it's liquid nitrogen, like they do with half the stuff they do. He let the screen tell the story. Down to, at one point, he's chasing them in the helicopter, and I don't know if you know this, but to pilot a helicopter, you need both hands. Both hands are doing something with the helicopter. You can't do it one hand. And as he's shooting with the gun and piloting the helicopter, I remember even the first time I'm saying, wait a minute, how is he? And there's like this extremely, you literally blink and you miss it shot, and you see that he's firing the gun. He has one hand on the collective, and there's a third hand that he grew to use on the throttle. Oh,
is that right? I didn't even catch that part.
I swear, it's so brief, but it was just one of those little visual moments of storytelling. And I was like, yes, and Cameron wouldn't have let that go with his geeky, engineering, stuff. So and it's like, of course he would grow a third arm. That makes sense.
Was this on the special edition or on the regular cut?
No, and it's brief. It's in the regular edition, and it's like literally such a quick, brief shot that if you blink, you miss it.
Oh, that's funny. And by the way, now that
they focus more onto it in the special edition, they absolutely focus more on it in the special edition. But yeah, I saw it. I was looking for it just to make sure, because I only watched. By the way, we probably should have let the audience know we actually watched the theatrical edition. We talked about doing the extended edition, but we decided to stick with the theatrical edition. So that's what we're reviewing.
But by the way, I will say, now that we're talking about it, I will say that those deleted scenes that do end up in the extended cut, I don't know why they cut that stuff out. A lot of that stuff was really interesting. When they're doing when they're in the foundry at the end, and he starts getting all kinds of glitchy, where he's kind of getting stuck on things. I mean, those effects were really good. In fact, I was watching, there's a scene towards the end when, again, they're in that foundry thing, and everybody's sort of separated, and you hear John, and it's Sarah Connor calling, and as he comes and he's running towards his mom, all of a sudden the other Sarah Connor pops up behind and says, get out of the way, John, right before she fires. Well, in the extended cut, John looks down and he can see that the glitchy feet is getting kind of tangled up with the grating of the floor. Right. I don't know why they cut that out. I really don't. I mean, those effects are great. They kind of do add to the story. So I'm kind of wondering why that decision was made. And it doesn't really add a lot of time onto the running time. So, it's a 2 hour and 17-minute movie. And in the late 80s, early 90s, and this is early 90s, that long of a movie was unheard of. Like, everything. Think of all the Rambo movies and stuff like that we reviewed. Most of them have been at most, an hour and 40 minutes, even less. That was the 80s standard. Your movies were an hour and a half long, maybe a little bit longer. The reason for that was so that you can fit in more screenings to get more money. That was the logic behind that. Right. And from what I understand, Cameron had to push just to get the 2 hour and 10-minute running time that he got. Yeah. I mean, it's true. But I mean, personally, and this is just me, there's a lot of that kind of lame dialogue stuff I would have trimmed down. By the way, there's also a cut scene where they really went to a lot of trouble for this shot where they're kind of looking in the mirror as she's going to pull the thing out of his head.
Yeah, when he because in the original script, the Terminator's learning chip was not turned to learning; it was just set to predatory mode, and they had to manually hit the switch for it in order for him to start learning.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, and that was sort of interesting, and I can see where that would have run on a little bit long, and I actually do sort of question the judgment of Sarah Connor in that moment because she's gonna smash the chip to kill him.
I mean, at the time, it's still new. She didn't trust him at that point. There was nothing, the guy, the last time she saw this guy, he basically stalked the ever-living hell out of her, killed her mom and everything like that. So you can't really, and that's actually a story point that we see is still going to carry over in the new movie because what's the first thing she does when the door opens in the trailer for Dark Fate? She tries to shoot at Arnie.
Which I find extremely confusing given the again, the journey through this film and the ending. I don't get it, but we'll see what plays out.
There should not have been a sequel to this movie. It would have been nice if there was just the perfect duology movie. And that's probably not even the right word. And you can tell that Cameron put a lot of stuff into this to try to say, this is it. There's no more after this. But far be it from studio executives to follow that advice.
Right. No, right. It's so unlike them to kick a dead horse.
Same make.
These were taken at the West Highland Police Station, 1984. You were there.
Same model.
These were taken today.
You have to let me see my son. He's in great danger.
New mission.
And speaking of kicking dead horses, well, this one isn't so dead, but this one needs a score, my man. It is time.
Yeah, I didn't give you a very good segue. Sorry about that.
It's okay. It's okay. They can't all be aces.
Yeah. So yeah, listen, I'm there's a part of me that kind of can't believe that I'm actually going to score this a little lower than I did the original. Because I think I think this was always sort of treated as one of those movies that, it's the rare exception where the sequel kind of outdoes its predecessor. And, this is sort of amazingly, Cameron's got at least 2. You could actually even make the argument for 3, possibly, if you really want to stretch a little bit. But Cameron, again, he's that rare filmmaker who can take something and sort of just give it a big old shot of adrenaline. I mean, it's like he takes an otherwise masterful film and shoves some Red Bull down its throat, and then gives us this this amped up sequel that takes what was great about the first one and does it again on steroids. So yeah, and this is a masterful film. Again, the action, the effects are flawless. The action scenes are amped to 11. And again, his direction is pretty flawless. The visual look of the film, by the way, I mean, he goes kind of an extra mile to give this whole thing kind of this steely blue futuristic glow. And, it's a great looking film too. So, again, it's hard for me to really kind of even pick on it, but I do sort of feel that story-wise, I find the original Terminator to be really kind of a little more flawless in that respect. This one, it requires just a tiny little bit more as far as like leaps in logic goes. And I do find it mildly distracting that we had to make Arnold the star of the film because he's becoming increasingly popular. He is a full-blown action hero at this point, so making him the bad guy, it's not good enough this time around. And of course, we're going to amp up the effects, and we're going to have a liquid metal Terminator. And when you start to think about the possible science behind that, you kind of go, huh? But again, it evolves with the special effects. And of course, the films have continued to do that. So now just basically every Terminator just like seriously, what can the Terminator do now? It can literally do whatever special effects can say it does. It says it does. And this was sort of the dawn of that. So anyway, I'm going to give it a 9. It's a high 9. It's a spectacular masterpiece of an action film. And again, I find it to be just shy strictly in terms of storytelling. It's just shy of the original. But it is an amazing film.
This movie does, in a small way, kind of ruin many of the plot elements of the first movie. But that's okay. It was one of those situations where it was either, hey, we're doing this sequel, whether you like it or not, so get on board. And I think Cameron did as best as he could without completely savaging his original. However, the original is certainly a much more solid movie. Much better plotted, much better put together. There isn't, as you said, the leaps in logic that there were that there are in this movie. So, yeah, I also gave this movie a 9. I agree completely with your final summation. I really don't want to add to it. I still enjoy the ever-living hell out of this movie, but it is not as strong an outing as the first. And not being as strong an outing as the first doesn't hurt it as a movie, but when you compare it to it, a 9 is absolutely right.
Alrighty, I was a little nervous that my excessive nitpicking was going to maybe give us differing scores, but I'm glad we're on the same page.
No. This is a terrific, excellent pinnacle of 80s action movie, and Cameron firing on all cylinders. So yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and worry about the nitpicks. Hell, we can go through the entire Marvel movies that we loved and pick the nick out of them like nobody's business.
There you go.
Sometimes, it goes back to my magic trick analogy. If you don't see the sleight of hand, then that works for me. It's a trick, but that's okay.
There you go.
You fell for the trick. And who asked you? I have a feeling I know what yours is.
My that predictable. I gotta give it to Edward Furlong again. It's and it's funny too. Like I kind of felt like you would think today, looking back at this film, I would be a little more forgiving and say, oh, come on, give the kid a break. He's fine. But it's those little whines here and there. Every time he kind of delivered a line, I'm like, yeah, there it is. I remember I didn't like this. And so it's still there. But again, it's not a huge deal. It's not a major criticism, but when you're dealing with an otherwise flawless film in many ways, yeah, it's noticeable. So gonna give it to him.
And I don't blame you for giving it to him. He is, of the actors in this movie, he is probably the weakest one. For me, it still annoys me to this very day. And you know what? It's a testament to just how excellent the special effects are in this movie, that whenever the slightest little ding in the special effects happen, it is so glaring that I can't stop not noticing it. Since the first time I saw this movie, there's one particular effect. Arnold is riding the top of the jackknife trailer as it's heading into the foundry. It smashes into the doors, and the most awkward, oops, he fell off and rolls away thing. Like, Cameron must have been humiliated by that shot or something, or he just kind of mentally ignored it, because it is so clunky looking that it just jars me every single time I see it. Every single time.
Yeah, I know exactly the one you mean, and I agree with you. I remember that was the one effect that didn't quite work, and maybe they should have tried it another way. Even if he just threw a dummy off,
or something,
probably would have worked better.
And granted, 5 seconds later is that amazing effect where he shatters the T-1000 with the bullet.
Yeah.
And that was that real-time stuff. That was beautiful model work and everything like that. There was so much in this movie that, and it's like I said, it's why it stood out to me. because everything else was so meticulous and, dare I say, perfect, that the minute you found that one chink in the armor, it's like, oh, it just stands out like a turd in a punch bowl.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Yep.
And how about for your consideration, my kind sir?
I have to give it to that moment where Arnold crawls out the back of the truck, runs up the front of the other truck, and just blasts that guy in the face. That I mean, literally, that I think my eyeballs just would have rolled out of my head the first time I saw that. I mean, that was just insane, and it was almost like that to me was in some ways just the peak and pinnacle of the mastery that James Cameron has to do action. And again, it's his editing. And again, I know he plans carefully. I know he storyboards. So he did that. He just made that work. I mean, that was just off the hook.
I agree, man. That is a tremendous, that entire sequence is, I will say it right here, right now. There is your benchmark. There is no action sequence in the entire series that is going to top that. I guarantee it.
How about you, my friend?
I'm giving it to Robert Patrick. I still find myself menaced by him. Like, even to the point, like when I first saw him in The Sopranos many years later, remember he was the guy that owned the sports shop that Tony, like, basically, tore to pieces. Yes. Okay. Even when I saw him in that, and to me, that was another testament of him as a great actor, because here, the last time I saw him, he was seriously the most menacing character I'd ever seen. And here he was, this dumb piece of crap person, weak, and so on and so forth. That which was a great testament to him as an actor. The things he did for this movie, for this part, just amazed me, and it shows. The way he moved his eyes. Did you know that when he's running and his mouth is closed and his eyes are down and stuff like that? He trained himself. To run as fast as he could while breathing through his nose, just to get that effect to look correct. And he trained himself so well that during some pre-shot, whatever they're called, practice or rehearsal. During some rehearsal, he actually used to be able to catch up to Edward Furlong on his dirt bike.
Really?
That's what I read. It's got to be true. It's on the internet. It's got to be true. But regardless of that, even watching it again this time, I was both enthralled and terrified by his character. I didn't feel... I felt like he out-Arnied Arnied. And when you can say you did that, because we talked about it last week. We talked about how just downright terrifying Arnie was in this movie. Here, Robert Patrick did his own little thing and was just as, and if in some ways, even more scary to me.
Yeah.
So hats off. This movie is chock full of accolades that deserve to be thrown out there. Stan Winston back with his effects, Cameron's writing, Cameron's directing, the acting by Schwarzenegger, by Linda Hamilton. But Patrick, man, he just, every time I see this movie, I just can't take my eyes off him. He's just enthralling to me.
I'm with you there. I'm with you. It's interesting. It's interesting that, I remember Robert Patrick from Die Hard 2, and he had, again, only just sort of a little bit part in there, but he worked, again, he looked perfect for the part. But it was funny how they had that other actor playing the baddie, and Robert Patrick probably looked a little too young, not quite as, it was almost like the bad guy that they did get for Die Hard 2 was kind of almost a little more cliche. Whereas I think Robert Patrick in this is so incredibly believable. You know what I mean? Like, he's kind of just right for this part, because again, he still needs to be that guy who can schmooze the parents and schmooze. Hey, I'm looking for this kid. Have you seen this kid? And look believable and likable, and then can turn on a dime, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, he's scary.
Yeah. Exactly. You gotta. Some actors will always say it's always much more fun to play the villain, but some people just choose scenery, and other people just say, I know what my job is for this. Don't chew the scenery, just be the character. And he did it.
Yep. Big time.
And there it is, our Terminator 2 Judgment Day review, ladies and gentlemen. And unfortunately, I'm calling it right here, right now. This is it. This is the high watermark. It's all downhill from here, ladies and gentlemen.
The next one, I'm really going to have to watch that one because I think I saw it one time in the theater and never saw it again. So it'll be interesting to revisit that one.
I think I'm in the same boat with you, man. I don't believe I mean, I've got it. I've got it. So, but yeah, this is going to be a slog. This is definitely going to be a slog. Weirdly, though, it's funny. I was putting it into perspective because later on this year, we're going to actually review the prequel trilogy to Star Wars.
Right.
Okay. Weirdly, I'm thinking to myself, well, which is worse, David? Honestly, these are worse. I'm calling it now.
Okay. That's an interesting premise. We'll have to see. And we're actually doing that right after the Terminator. So yeah.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying it. I feel like I'm going to be after Force Awakens and Last Jedi. I have a feeling we're going to look at the prequels a little bit differently now.
Yeah, I like our timing for that because again, we're leading up to the now that we've been through. I mean, it's funny. You know when the prequels were still fresh and Red Letter Media was going strong and you kind of went, yeah, boy, these are terrible, and now I can sort of get my head around why. And then you got these other two, and you're kind of going, what about those prequels again? Yeah, so yeah, I'm curious to get to that as well.
Yeah, I'm very curious, but I don't have any positive memories about any of the upcoming Terminator movies.
No,
none, not one.
No.
So at least with the prequel trilogies, I can think of some cool fight scenes and stuff like that happened in them. I can't think of anything positive about these guys that we got coming up.
Yeah,
because next week is Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines. I hadn't even given the title yet.
Let the fun begin.
You and I have different definitions of fun.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for dealing with the power outage there, and thank you for dealing with me with the late recording with this. I apologize.
Not a problem at all.
All right, so let's soldier on.
A good show, my friend. We got through it.
Oh no, this wasn't hard to get through. It's what's coming next that's going to be hard to get through.
Oh, there's that.
This week was, we're on the playground and the kid's like, I got you. No, I got you. Like the scene in the movie. That was this week. That was fun. That was fine. Next week is D-Day. And we're the freaking guys on the boats.
Good analogy, my friend. Good analogy.
So until next time, sir.
Until next time, my friend, and I will see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode, and be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube for spoiler-free reviews of new releases. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider becoming a Patreon. You can find our page on patreon.com/reviewswithoutremorse, one word. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are for commentary and critique and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.
Don't go!
I must, John Connor. To protect the future, I must be destroyed.
Wait! Of all the abusive fathers that came and went, you, a Terminator, were the only positive influence. Stay. Be John's father.
Dad?
Affirmative.
You were supposed to pick me up from school and take me to a Dodger game.
Oops, forgot.
I order you not to forget stuff.
Negative. A string of neglectful father figures gave you a strong distrust of authority. That trait led to your role as leader of the resistance and savior of the human race. So go get me another beer, you piece of shit. What are you doing, idiot?
Writing a short story for school.
Would you like my review? This is terrible. You don't write stories again. You suck at it.
Don't worry, I won't.
I am drunk.
Good for you.
Don't smoke in my house, boy.
I can do whatever I want in my room.
Now your room has no wall, so it's technically part of my house. Hasta la vista, but not.
He has a point, John.